Hey friend! So today I have a book that is probably been very thoroughly reviewed throughout all of booktube. It's the second book in the initial Grisha-verse trilogy. It is Siege and Storm by Leigh Bardugo. I fell in a very weird place with this series. I did not read it when it was popular, found it through the Crows duology, and then just as I was sitting down to read it, I found out they were making it a Netflix show. So I didn't jump on the train because of that, but I am on the train at the same time. So I'm just going to embrace it. I'm sure there are already a lot of reviews out there, so thank you for giving mine a try. Since it's the second book, I don't want to speak too much on what happens just in case you haven't read the first one. So the book starts off with Alina and her BFF Mal hiding in some port town. Last time when we left the two, they were running from the Darkling, and they're still hiding out and trying to escape all the mess that's going down in Ravaka. Even though they think that they're hidden quite well, they're still found by Ravakan forces, and through some different adventuring and turntabling, Alina really has it pressed upon her heart that she needs to go back and she needs to help the Ravakan people. Alina decides to go back and try to put back the pieces of broken Ravaka that the Darkling's power grab has left in its wake. So much as with the first book, the second book has a very easy POV system to follow. The whole book focuses on Alina. In the epilogue and prologue, we have a third person kind of examining of what's going on in the situation. But for the rest of the book, it is always told in first person past tense. I think that all these elements are very easy to manage and shouldn't be cause to trip up any reader, so I rate it a 1 out of 5. I think the morality struggle is again pretty similar to what we saw in the first book. It's something that in my experience shows up a lot in YA books, which is the main character dealing with selflessness and when your wants and needs have to be given up for something greater. Alina realizes that she has a great gift that nobody else has, and also from her closeness with the Darkling has information that not a lot of other people do. And so she realizes that she is uniquely qualified to be able to help Ravaka and is putting aside her want to just be anonymous and be with Mal, and is putting that to the side so that she can help the countless people that share this country with her. But while kind of giving up what you want is never easy, it's a pretty easy morality struggle to understand. We've all kind of had to do that before. So since it is a pretty common theme and also it is not delved into too complexly, I would only rate this 2 out of 5 in being at all difficult to understand or follow. So I think this book is even more tame romantically than the first book. There are a few kisses shared, but nothing more intimate happens. The closest that we get to any sort of description is Alina wishing for it in her bed, thinking about how Mal's outside guarding and how she'd like for him to be inside not guarding. I really don't know how you could be more tame intimately while still having romance. So because of that, I rate this a 1 out of 5. It's safe for all audiences. So even though Ravaka is at war and Alina is kind of helping, again, no spoilers, there isn't a lot of war. There's a lot of her thinking about fighting and tactical planning, but the battle is made a little less bloody still because the opponents are shadow creatures, so they don't bleed. They're really hard to hurt, which is unfortunate for our merry band of misfits, but it makes combat with them a lot less gory because only one side can really be physically hurt. Our team can be hurt, and before it ever comes to that, Alina also sees her share of injuries in between her being found by some Ravakans and her actually coming to the capital. Again, mum's the word, but there's a large amount of fighting. But even though we see fighting with some real flesh and blood people, the descriptions are very reined in. So I would only rate this a 2 out of 5 in severity. I don't think it should dissuade most people from going ahead and picking up the book if they were interested. So I'd say my opinions on this book don't really fluctuate that much from the first one. I can see why a lot of people get swept up in it. I did too. But when I look at it a little bit more critically, I find that I'm not quite as excited about it. I think Bardugo does a great job creating a good atmosphere. And so maybe that's why it's so easy to get swept up in the book. But I feel like when I look at the plot and I kind of break down what happens, there's not a whole lot happening each book. It feels kind of drawn out, and it's just kind of the typical hero's journey. I feel like I could kind of foresee a lot of what's happening. I really don't like the romance. It's just so overdone, I guess, that boy next door that you had a crush on growing up ends up liking you too, and oh, isn't everything peachy? Or, well, it's probably not, because no relationship just has everything perfect, but you know, y'all make it through in the end, and oh, isn't that great? I like Alina enough that I'm happy for her, and I'm glad that she's got somebody that she likes. And yeah, sure, they have points of frustration, but for the most part, like, they seem like they're gonna make it through. This is only the second book. Third book could end entirely different. But I think that's the real part that just kind of sticks in my craw. I do not care for the romance, and in the second book I felt like there was a lot of that when she goes to the Capitol, because she's like, oh, it's really weighing on my heart, I feel like I have to help these people. Mel basically goes, nah, let's go. I don't like these people, let's get out of here. That's their whole story point throughout the second book, and I just don't really care, and I don't feel like they're sitting down like adults and having a conversation. They both just keep snapping at each other and freaking out and not letting each other explain, and I do not like that as a way to drive the plot. I'm a little bit critical of this book and the series. I feel like there are some things that are less unique for all the attention that it's getting, but on the other hand, I did get so swept up in the first book that I read it in 2 nights. I haven't read a book that fast in a long time. So that must mean that it's good and that I liked it, right? And I did read the second one very fast too. And honestly, because I've enjoyed some of Bardugo's other works so much more, I think that it's probably that she's a really good writer. But with this being at least her first series that I know of, I'm sure there have been some other works before, but I think this was the one that really launched her career. It's kind of formulaic. And I also get where that makes sense from a publishing standpoint. You might not want to take a chance on an entirely unheard of author and a completely mold-shattering story. You want one of these things to be known, so at least if the story is kind of something that isn't earth-shatteringly new, then you can take a chance with this new author as long as the story like has a fun point or two, is told kind of well, you know. But I feel like I've waxed on for too long, so let me wrap things up. Alright, so my too long didn't read is that this is a good book that should be palatable for all audiences. I don't think anything scored over a 2. But while it's good, I also don't think it's quite hype-worthy. There's still quite a few things present in this book that I've seen throughout YA, and so that has me not being as excited by it as I have some other YA or slightly more skewed towards just the A, I guess, books that I've seen recently. But that is all I have to say about Siege and Storm by Leigh Bardugo. It is the second book, so if this sounded at all interesting to you, make sure you check out the first one. I feel silly that it took me so long to remember the name, but the name of the first book is Shadow and Bone, and again, the author is Leigh Bardugo. But that's all I have to say about this book, so I just want to thank you so much for stopping by. I really appreciate your support. Hope this video finds you well and that I get to see you in the next one. Bye for now.